Hey, crew, welcome to the MMOA podcast. My name is Shelby Blankenship. I will be your host today, and today we're going to be chatting about caregivers and how we can support them at a 2.0 level. So, this past weekend, my clinic helped host a caregivers workshop specifically focusing on mental and physical well-being. So I obviously from the PT side supported the physical side, and then we brought in a social worker who is local to our area and is a huge expert when it comes to the caregiving role, navigating end of life things, helping folks who are navigating dementia, Alzheimer's, etc. And she was doing more of the mental side. So, three big buckets that we're going to focus on is the physical side of being a caregiver, the mental side of being a caregiver, and then the social side. So, let's chat in through the physical. So, with physical, this tends to not only be I have to physically be able to transport my patient or my client from A to B, but it also is the physical toll of doing their job. And some of the people who do this job, they are not getting paid to do this. They are either a family member or they have assumed this role because there is nobody else that can financially fill this role. And it can be a very large physical toll. And one of the things that we chatted about in our workshop is how can we sprinkle in more opportunities for our caregivers to get physical exercise? Not only is that great for just building overall like reserve and resiliency that we talk about a lot in our live course, but it also just like allows them to kind of burn some steam. Like that is one of those areas that, you can do a physical laboring job all day, but it's not the same as like specifically going to the gym or specifically doing a workout where the whole focus is for you. And that is an area that the caregivers, they just tend to put themselves on the back burner a bunch. And so what we talked about is from a physical side, from a PT perspective, I gave them a 9-minute EMOM to practice in the workshop. And it was mostly things that like they could do around their home and could be easily modifiable or scalable to either up the ante or down the ante, depending on what they have going on that day. So the three movements that we focused on were doing a suitcase march. They could do that either in place or they could do it with a step up component. That's something super simple where they could just grab something like a heavy object. It could be as simple as a dumbbell or it could be as home friendly as like a cast iron skillet and doing like 30 seconds each side. And then the second exercise we did was thrusters. Now you could do this where you just hold one object with both hands or have two separate objects in each hand. And that's a great one because it works on sit to stand capacity, but also overhead pressing, getting that cardio component, which we love. And then the third was doing a modified burpee. So we could do this whether, maybe they are doing like burpees where they can get on and off the floor. Maybe it's they're doing it from a chair or a couch. Maybe they're just doing components of the burpee where they're doing like wall push-ups and then maybe like a jump out and jump back in, like more of like a up down kind of situation. But those three movements are not only essential for them to work on, but that's something that they could work on with their clients that they're seeing, and they can be educated on how to modify them for their client. The other component that we really focused on from the physical side is breathing techniques. And this kind of sprinkles into like the mindfulness component, slowing down their breathing. But Jenny, who was our social worker that was helping me host this workshop, really focused on boxed breathing. Now, there's multiple ways you can do the breathing, but what I liked with hers is her emphasis was the inhale and the exhale should be different time components. So the inhale, for example, should be about 4 seconds and the exhale should be 6. So the exhale is always longer than the inhale. This not only helps down regulate your nervous system, but helps slow your breathing down. So when you have stressful moments, when you have situations where you feel out of control or you get that diagnosis that you didn't want to hear or things like that, if you go back to this breathing, it can kind of help you self-regulate a little bit easier. And it's something physical and tangible that either the client and or the people that they are serving can help do to just kind of like calm the situation down. Besides the physical, the other component that we really wanted to touch on was the mental side. Mentally, being a caregiver is very, very challenging, especially when you're not sure how long you're going to be doing it for. A lot of my clients, it's usually that they're caregiving for a spouse. And especially when it's a diagnosis like dementia, maybe there's other mental health components there, or something like an ALS, a Parkinson's, where it has this consistent downtrend of physical and maybe mental capacity, it's hard to know how long you have to hang on for or keep it all together, for lack of a better word. And I think this is an area where we don't want to set people up for like to not be successful, but at the same time we have to be realistic of like the mental load that being a caregiver is. And the biggest things that the social worker really touched on was first just like acknowledging burnout. I think this, you can see this in almost any job, especially in healthcare. It does help when you acknowledge like I am not in a good space. Like I am burned out, like I'm exhausted. Like this, it is really hard to care so much and with so many different people, especially when you can't always impact those people. And so once you kind of acknowledge, like where mentally you are on the spectrum of burnout, and it can kind of change, right, hour to hour, day to day. And she really emphasized on like establishing a routine that actually puts them as well in mind, not just the person they're caregiving for. And this is an area that I kind of, it's kind of like a duh, but you don't really think about like that necessarily. I think about a ton of people I know who are new moms or have been moms to very young kiddos, and their routine is so centered sometimes around their kids. Like, right? Like they got to feed them. They got to make sure they're down for their naps. They got to do all these things, and all that is great. But very rarely do they establish something in their routine that includes something for them. And I think it can make you feel like you're on the back burner, or you are like a background actor of your own life. Like you're not the lead role. And sometimes that can just feel really draining. And it can lead to things like feeling like you lack the ability for control in your own life, but you're always like kind of the side piece. Like you're just not, nothing really matters of what you do because everything is mattering about this one person. And that's not fair, right? Like there are certain times where you kind of have to knuckle down and just kind of grit through it, but it shouldn't be this thing that's lasting weeks, months, years. And we have to acknowledge that we have to be advocating for ourselves, but also as the caregiver, that they need to put themselves into their own routine. The third component that we talked about when it came to the mental aspect is doing tasks that bring them joy. So it kind of goes back to like including themselves in their routine, but you don't want it to just be productive tasks, right? Like, well, I'm going to exercise because I need to exercise. Like, that's great. Like, we want people to exercise, but we also want it to be things that bring them joy. So maybe, the exercise isn't always the same routine that they do every day. Maybe it's taking that dance class. Maybe it's trying something new. Maybe it's yoga. Maybe it's like goat yoga or, whatever it might be. Or maybe it's as simple as I just want to sit in a corner and read my book for 15 minutes. Like, doing things that bring you joy allows you to have a little bit more skin in the game of keeping yourself in a good headspace versus when you're always dumping your energy into other people and it's never coming back. Like that's honestly one of the hardest parts I think about being a caregiver is you're always dumping energy, but that person might not have the capacity to help like fulfill you in the, also. And especially if you're not getting dumped in from other people or other like friends, family, whatever, it can just feel like you're constantly running on empty or running very, very low on fuel. And that's just not a way to live. It is very, very challenging to stay in that role if that is something that you're dealing with of just constantly being dumped out and never dumped in. The third part that we want to chat about is the social side. It can be very isolating being a caregiver. It can just seem like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders and nobody understands your situation. And what I really liked about our social worker is not only did she emphasize joining like support groups or like establishing community resources in the area, but asking for help and allowing people to actually take you up on it. It doesn't have to be like something super complicated. It doesn't have to be like, oh, like I need you to manage all our finances, or I need you to manage like cleaning our house or any of those things. Like, it can be as simple as like, hey, can you pick something up for me from the grocery store? Or can you take my husband, maybe that's the person you're caregiving for, and drop him off at this men's group, or take like transport, or things that don't require like a lot of like where you physically have to be there, that like mental decision fatigue can really set in, but allowing people to help you on things that are kind of mundane. Like it needs to get done, but it doesn't really matter who gets it done. And that's the area that I really try to emphasize when I have caregivers and coming into my clinic is like, hey, not everything has to be done by you. Like there are some things that for sure have to be done. Maybe it's like insurance stuff or, medical bills and those kinds of things. But there is some stuff that is like kind of anybody could do it. And it could be as simple as, like mowing the grass or, whatever. It doesn't have to be everything piling on top of you. And so allowing people to actually help, and pride is a huge area, right? Like people don't want to have to ask for help, but these are situations where it takes a village. There is no way to caregive for somebody and to do it on your own island. Like it's just impossible, because it ultimately is going to affect the caregiver drastically, where they end up passing before the person they're caring for. And we see this all the time, right? And that is just an area that like we're trying to like negate that as much as possible. So kind of to sum up everything, when it comes to this caregiving role, like we really want to emphasize like physically what can they have some control over, and where can they take a little bit of time out of their day where it's not this big, like, oh, I got to go to this like 3-hour long gym class or anything. Like just taking 9 minutes, like doing that EMOM, like it could be that simple. And then the breathing exercises, like I love that. That is such a way to like establish some control over areas where you sometimes feel like you have no control. And it helps like regulate that nervous system. Like how many people we know where their nervous system is so upregulated because they're constantly in this fight or flight mode. And we can allow them to have that moment of just like, okay, recenter, getting into that mindfulness space, super, super important. Mentally, acknowledging when you're burnt out and being okay with establishing routines where you are part of it. And that is just an area that I feel like is so often missed. Like we just so often put that to the side, put it to the side, put it aside. Allow yourself to be a part of your life. Put yourself in the routine. Do things that make you happy and joyful. And then the last is social. Like, don't put yourself on an island. We're not meant to do this alone. Like, allow caregiver support groups, allow going to a therapist, allow yourself to ask for help and actually receive it. So Caregiver 2.0, I hope this is helpful for you guys. We got a couple of classes coming up. L1 is starting back March 18th. They're finishing up their first cohort of the year right now. L2 is getting ready to start up on February 9th. And then we've got live coming to Wichita, Kansas, February 21st. And then we will be in Seattle, Washington, February 28th. We hope to see you there. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.